Time for Gene Shepard, humorist, after-dinner speaker, and recipient of the Mark Twain Award for 1976. Here's Gene.
Tavern in the town, and there my true love sets him down. Incidentally, I have some unbelievably fantastic, totally creative lyrics to that, which are only available if you're over 21 and a guaranteed sociology student or professor. You don't hand this stuff out to the hoi polloi. Oh, there is a tavern in the town, and there my true love sets him down. In a weeping willow tree. La-da-tee, please, if you will. That's style, buddy, style. Some got it, most ain't. And them that ain't think they can get it at Macy's in the boutique section. Style is much more a matter of high boots and plaid pants. It is a matter of attitude. Some got it, most ain't. You're born with it, buddy. Nothing is sadder than to watch Marty, the eternal Marty, shopping for style at Barney's in the Edwardian Road. A couple of nights ago, we began work on a major essay on one of the new major industries of our time, which is the Blabber industry. And I'm going to continue that. Now, if you don't know what Blabber is, it's, well, let's say by definition almost anything Truman Capote writes. Blabber, or almost anything Nora Ephron writes. This is called Blabber. And it's usually very, very egotistical, like, you'll never guess who I saw last night at 21. And oh my God, was he drunk. This kind of thing. See, this is called Blabber. And it's a major industry these days. And we're going to call our Blabber department here a salute to Rona Barrett. She's, of course, one of the major Blabber queens. And we'll get into that. I suppose, though, you shouldn't use that word these days, what with liberation movements on all fronts. So, by the way, speaking of liberation movements, I have a friend who is a tape recorder addict. Now, I might add, I do not approve of addictions of any type. I think addictions of any type bespeak illness. You agree, gang? Unless, of course, it's... the best thing to do is to have an addiction for something that you cannot afford, at which point it cannot grab you down there deep where you live. I mean, really, seriously, if you have an addiction, let's say, to old charter bourbon, for example, well, now, you'll find for starters, you'll have to search high and low for your average liquor store to even have heard of old charter bourbon. So you're not going to give in to that addiction quickly. If you don't know what that is, that's the bourbon that ancient Southern colonels drank when the guests had left, and it's the real thing, as they say. So this is the kind of addiction that I do not necessarily disapprove of. However, I think that the addiction to media today is approaching madness in our time. Though there are some people who, you see them in New York more than anywhere else, they walk around no matter where they go, and they carry this radio with them, roaring constantly, unintelligibly in the middle of the giant din of taxi cabs, hurling invectives from one to the other. And this guy's walking down the street, and he's got this thing going, And they come complete. You know, you can get the cassette types. You can get types that you can walk around the streets and listen to nothing but the police calls. You know, the addiction to media is really rapidly approaching the St. Vitus phenomena of the Middle Ages. You recall who the saint was? And, you do, of course. Then we don't have to discuss that. You know how he achieved his sainthood? Well, then, for God's sakes, don't pretend knowledge you don't have. That is absolutely the worst kind of problem you can get yourself into. And St. Vitus was a prominent saint, and he achieved sainthood. He would have been astounded to discover what later on his name was applied to, as was also the case of St. Valentine. St. Valentine never once cut out a paper heart and sent it to anybody. In fact, St. Valentine was a notorious curmudgeon. But I don't want to get into that. That's you know, I hate to touch upon people's deep-held theological concepts. So, you know, time is of the essence. It is, indeed. And it's the only thing that any of us all have. We're all given, at birth, we're given an allotment of time. And what you do with it in between, you know, there's like the other day, there was this full-page ad in the Times. You know, you see some pretty funny things in the ads, actually. It shows this girl looking out of this page. By the way, have you noticed that the faces have changed on ads? And now they're looking vaguely embattled and angry. Like, for example, oh, yes, now think carefully. You drive along the road and you see this great big signboard, and there's this guy looking out. He looks real mad, seeing he's got his shirt torn open. He's wearing what looks like a tiger's tusk on a chain around his neck. And he says, "I don't question why I smoke. I like the taste." You see, obviously he's mad because everybody is saying, "When are you stupid? When are you going to give that up?" You know. And now of course he's embattled, and no longer do you see the ads where people grin. You know, they're sitting there remember those great cigarette ads? The guy sitting on the bank of a stream with this chick, and you see the sparkling water behind. And you just expect something really great to happen. And what do? They light a cigarette. What a come down. But I suppose in certain circles, cigarettes did substitute for the real thing. I mean, in movie parlance, they always did, you know. And Fred Astaire was really getting close to Ginger Rogers. Instead of reaching out and grabbing her, what he did, they very casually lit a cigarette with an ivory cigarette holder. And you knew the true love had come. But my friend, speaking of addiction, is addicted to this tape recorder. The only problem is he lives in a very dull world. And if you live in a dull world, there's damn little to tape record. I mean, you can tape record the sound of your Aunt Clara falling asleep. You can tape record the sound of the radiator making that funny noise that it makes. All these things are fodder for the tape recorder addict. And he has collected a series of recordings of various automobiles and clunkers of our time, either starting or not quite starting. And he has a great collection of them. He has a 63 Dodge Dart. He has a 67 Ford Galaxy with bad valves. They came with bad valves. That's a funny thing. Yeah, George. Many people just drove them right out of the showroom right to the garage, you know. Get it fixed up for you and get out there on the road, you know. But nevertheless, he's got all these great things. Now, for example, here's one of the prizes of his collection. This is a 56 Pontiac, attempting to start. Well, may I please have that? Listen to that thing. Isn't that unbelievable? No, it isn't. Not if you own one. God, it's familiar, isn't it? Look at that. That battery's going down and everything. Almost. There he almost got it. Okay. That is a 56 Pontiac. In case you're curious, it was the Starfire model. That's a 56 Pontiac that was attempting to start. A very familiar sound to many owners of that breed. That car had more iron in it per square foot of beaten tin than any other model of that period. Great car. All right, now, we will give you the sound of the same car, a 56 Pontiac, after they have taken it down to the Shell station, had the battery recharged again, put new plugs in, which they had to do every maybe 20 or 30 minutes, drained the carburetor, took all the dead flies out of that little glass pot on the bottom, and they finally were able to achieve success. This is the sound of a 56 Pontiac starting. You notice it's not willing, but it ain't going to do it easy. Oh, my God, what a great feeling. There you go. Look at all that smoke. My George. Great. Isn't that a great sound? That is the sound of a 56, seriously, a sound of a 56 Pontiac just getting it all together, which was a big phrase for that period. Oh, yes, in 56, everything, they were always getting things together. Well, anyway, I thought you'd like to hear that 56. Can I have that 56 Pontiac? It's starting again. That's a good satisfaction. You know, the summation and the consummation of all that is in our hearts. Come on, baby. Come on. Come on. Come on. It ain't that cold out. Come on. Buddy. All right, come on now. Hold your breath. There, it started. I saw it kick over. Look, you're going to run the battery down. Cut it out, you damn fool. Stop it. I hate to hear a battery being run down like that. You know, another one of the great sights that curdle the soul of anybody who loves machines is the sight of a 49-year-old lady getting into her 67 Buick at the parking lot of the A&P and then sticking the key in and turning it on and going, whoom, instantly. Oh, God. A lot of people don't know. That's an understatement. And by the way, wouldn't you get really bugged if this lady came around your office with that coffee cart and she keeps making instant coffee? Oh, boy, I'd kick her right down the elevator shaft. I mean, anybody who confuses instant coffee for coffee probably also tends to live in a balsa wood house. Hey, do you know that the newest hot toy around is a wind-up cockroach? Well, I think that's, that's teaching the kids what life's going to be like. You know that there's a new game called Famine? Sure. Well, board game, You move 2 spaces. You have just been transferred to the outskirts of Calcutta. That kind of stuff. Yeah, really sick. I'll tell you. There's a board game called Famine. There's one called Unemployment. And that's a fun game. I notice, though, the only people who play it are those with damn good jobs and really tough unions. I know one guy that just figured out, he figured out where the power really was. He quit working entirely. Now he works entirely for his union. That's kind of like theologians, You know what? As a theologian, the Middle Ages. See, the theologian got so involved in the theory of the church, not even in the theory of the church, in the theory of theology, which has little to do ultimately with the church. And so eventually, a whole new professional class grew that had nothing to do with good and evil and the devil and God and any of this stuff. They dealt with a thing called theology, and they issued things called dicta. That style, I'd like to, instead of sending a memo to someone, issue a dicta. In fact, the other day, I pinned down the door of my office a white paper. Well, you have to do that occasionally to clear the air, A white paper, a statement of policy. Henceforth, anybody that fools around with any of my junk will be subject to the extreme pressure that can come from the various forces at work in this office. Like I will kick you in the behind. And I'm just not a sensitive person. I'm not. I've always envied the sensitive. And just like one time I met Philip Roth, very sensitive. Oh, he was just vibrating. He kept crawling around on the floor, and he went finally under the daybed, and I didn't know what to say. I was over at Gay Talisa's house, and I said, "What's the matter with him?" The police says, well, he's sensitive. I said, sensitive? I see. But I've always envied the sensitive. I really have. The people who can walk through life believing that they are pure, crystalline creatures, and that they are being remorselessly attacked by the evil, always represented by other people, of course. And I've envied those people like that. I mean, it hasn't done me much good. I mean, the people who feel that their position is always the right position because they are a good person. And a good person can only be on the right side of the angels. That's known as the Lillian-Hellman complex. That's what it's called. Hi, Lillian. How are you? Well, don't worry. She's not listening. She hasn't listened to anyone in years. She tells people, would you please just be calm for a minute now. The other day, I must admit, in passing, I opened up a can of, what is it that you open up a can of? It's on the tip of my tongue. I opened up a can of, no. Fruit Loops don't come in cans. By the way, I've always, I'd like to see Roosevelt Grier sitting down to a breakfast of Fruit Loops. Of course, this is the kind of thing that it takes a certain specialized taste in humor to understand that type of humor. That's just not Woody Allen humor. No. But then again, Woody Allen's humor, that's another thing. A little brittle there, and it tends to blow in the wind. But while on the subject of blowing in the wind, I do have to approach tonight's topic with some trepidation. This is the night we were going to tell you the story of how I first discovered the Blabber world. Now, I know I shouldn't tell you this. There's certain really ethical problems involved in this because, doctors, for example, rarely will talk to an outsider about what really is going on in his world. He may talk about something, about a new disease or something, but he will never discuss much of the real secrets of the profession. It's an ethical thing, right? You'll never hear, now there are certain other ethics. For example, you'll never hear a newsman is always attacking, right? But only politicians. You will never see a newsman attack another newsman. So, for example, you will never see Walter Cronkite come on some night and say, tonight's editorial, we want to take severe issue and great umbrage at something that John Chancellor did the other night. You just won't find that. It's never done. Well, because one does not attack one's own kind. In fact, this was said to me by a famous newsman when I brought up the subject. He says, well, you don't attack your own kind. Unless you're a politician, at which point you're constantly attacking the other. Well, by the way, I have to correct that. A person who is attacking another person in the field of politics never refers to himself as a politician. The other guy's a politician. You are either a statesman or a reformer. So it's a very important differential here that has to be made. And, of course, that's all part of the evangelical zeal with which many people pursue office. And often the evangelical zeal consists in that, achieving office. You'd be surprised. I'm always surprised that we don't understand this better. I mean, we all know other human beings. I mean, you may not know yourself. That's the hardest one to know. But we all know other human beings, and we know one of the most common of all human things is a guy pursuing a girl with unbelievable tenacity, zealousness. And 10 minutes after he has achieved his goal, he yawns and suggests that we all go out for salami sandwiches. And she can't figure out why he changed. Well, the pursuit of a goal is often far more exciting than the achievement of a goal. In other words, the contemplation of a Mercedes and the pursuit of a Mercedes is a hell of a lot more fun than having one. I'll tell you that. Especially after the first time you try to get that baby tuned up and they send you the bill for it. At which point, and that's what happens in human equation. You know, you pursue this girl and the next thing you know, you got rent payments. That takes the blush off the thing there, doesn't it, huh? But you never bargained for that in the back seat of your Pontiac on the Route 3 drive-in. But these things pursue you relentlessly. Oh, you want to hear it now? See, I'm really arguing here in favor of not telling you the inside of the blabber industry. No, you don't just go ahead and tell you, because you see, you'd be surprised. Industries are funny this way. Even though the audience wants to hear these things, the person who's involved always has his own private career going, which the audience doesn't have any, not. For example, you see somebody being interviewed on a TV show, on Johnny Carson, and they're talking about a director. Do you think he's going to tell you the truth about that director? You do. Why do you think that? Why not? I can think of at least 50 reasons why not, and certainly his agent can. I want to tell you, you're not going to blow yourself right out of the water, are you? Oh, well, if you do, you'd be surprised. I don't think they're keeping Robert Redford's job open at the Esso station where he used to work. Yeah, very seriously, that's where he'd damn well be if he blew his mouth off in the wrong places. So, everyone walks in a certain way, no matter how honest he thinks he is. He walks in certain areas upon a bed of uncooked eggs. Now, you don't necessarily walk on that same bed, and you don't even know it's there if it's in the other guy's garden. But, all right, I'll tell you about the blabber industry. This friend of mine, I won't go into it deeply, so come on, This friend of mine went to a very elegant school out in the Midwest. I mean, a school where liberal arts is so liberal and so arty that very few people are even allowed within the door. I mean, people who have normal problems like blowing their nose and stuff. It's a very elegant, very, very dynamic school. And he was a star pupil. For 4 years, he was straight A's there, majoring in English. In fact, he got to the point, kind of halfway in his junior year, and this is the truth, he had this fantastic memory, and he could quote whole pages of Thomas Wolfe. I'm talking about the real Thomas Wolfe. Of Time in the River, Look Homeward, Angel. He could. You'd say, and you do it by the number. If I said to him, I would say, Lee, I take up. Let's say I have Of Time in the River, and I would say, Lee, page 183, chapter 6, and he would concentrate, and then he would say, October lost and by the wind grieved. I said, my God, incredible. All right. So he was really, he was rarefied. I hate to say it, but he was rarefied. It got to the point actually that I was afraid to light a match near Lee, because he had almost approached the gaseous state of rarefication. He was that rarefied. He did not touch the ground. And so then he went on for his master's. And if anything, it was, after that, there was no stopping him. I mean, he was translating Homer from the Lithuanian. I mean, he didn't mess around with the Greek. Hell, anyone can do that. So he was just, that kind. So finally, he decided to come to New York and to test his lance against the mean, evil shield of the New York literati. He was going to get a job. He always said, what I'm going to do, I'm going to get a job at some place like the Saturday Review. And he said, I want to get my feet wet in the whole world, the wonderful, exciting world of literature. And then from there, I will go on to, I have a whole series of novels written in the form of trilogies, which in a sense will denounce the entire history of Western man. That kind of stuff. In poetic terms, of course, blank verse. I said, gee, that's a great idea, Lee. I mean, I can hardly wait. Let me know when it comes out in paperback. I mean, So he took off. And I think he was so rarefied at that point, he didn't have to buy a plane ticket or anything. He just sort of floated out, and by osmosis, he entered New York. Well, I did not hear. You know who osmosis is, don't you? Well, you've heard the term osmosis, haven't you? That's the way Jerseyites get into New York every day. You can't get through the damn tunnel. So, nevertheless, well, that's capillary action. We could get into Bottinugli's principle too there, because Bottinugli's principle is when you go down to the tunnel, the Holland Tunnel, and there's 28,000 cars going in there, and if you notice they go much faster when they get inside, that's Bottinugli's principle. Water rushes through a small enclosed opening, producing heat. That's why guys come out of the other end fist fight like hell. But, I don't like to, throw my great knowledge at you like this. At this time, I know it's been a tough day, and I don't want to bring up physics again, moments of inertia, and all that junk. Who needs it? Anyway, my friend came to New York. A year and a half went by, and I never heard a word from him. And so finally, after a couple of years, I came to New York myself. And I said, one of the things I was going to do when I first came to New York is I'm going to see Lee. I'm going to look Lee up. Well, I had an address for Lee. And so, sure enough, about a week after I got to town, I went down to this address, and it was a brownstone over on the west side in the 70s. I mean, one of the, let's put it this way, you have to fist fight your way to the house and fist fight your way out. And so I go up 3 flights, and I noticed some very interesting non-poetic things written all over the walls, and I could, there was a very pungent aroma hanging over the hallway down there at the bottom, and the aroma. So I finally got my way up to the 3rd floor there, seeing there's this green door, and I pound on it. I see this eye peeking out of this little brass peephole, and I hear a muffled, "What do you want?" I said, "It's me, Lee, it's me." "Who?" I said, "Me, don't you remember me?" "Oh, October and by the wind grieved, oh, the unturned stone." And he says, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I have come to see you." He said, "Why?" I said, "What do you mean, why?" I did not realize, of course, I was in New York. And New Yorkers are always very suspicious of anyone who comes not bearing brass knuckles. So at that point, I said, "Come on, Lee, for God's sakes, I got to use the John." So at that point, I didn't know what he was. He said, "Why not use the hall? Everybody else does." I said, "Lee, come on, open the door." So finally the door opens. I hear chains and bolts and locks going back and forth, clunking. And they finally get inside, and he had these great big bars, that go up against the door. Have you ever seen that kind? He had chains and locks and all kinds of stuff, and he was in his jockey shorts. He had a 3-day growth of beard. I said, "Lee, how is it going? Are you working on your novel?" He says, "Look, I don't have time to talk to you. What do you want?" I said, "Just talk about literature, wonderful things, and Jane Austen, and irony, and all that great stuff." So I got work to do. And he's squatting down at this ancient typewriter, and he's pounding away. And I said, "What are you doing, Lee?" He says, "I'm writing this guy's column." I said, "You're writing this guy's column? What do you mean?" Lee's job was to write the column for a local gossip columnist. The gossip columnist has gotten so big, he doesn't go to the office. I mean, he'd spent all his time down at 21 drinking. And Lee wrote this thing. He would write things like, "Tina Louise's new Chihuahua is now dyed green." And I said, "Where did you hear that?" Lee says, "What do you mean, hear it? I write it. I just make it up." He says, "You don't think that she's going to get mad at that, do you?" I says, "No, Lee, that's true." He says, I'm working in the Blabber industry. Shut up, I don't have no time." Talk about an ink-stained wretch. He was writing about Johnny Weissmuller's comeback. I says, "Is he coming back?" He said, "No, he ain't coming back. I'm writing it." Over on the west side, Lee is still sequestered in that fetid apartment. And he doesn't need wind-up cockroaches. You don't need the wind-up model when you got the real thing. And he's sitting over there popping it away, and it was at that point I began to realize very few columnists even write their columns. And what's more, the Blabber guy that writes the column for him does not get handouts. He invents them. Like President Ford's favorite brand of cigar comes from Havana. He just writes it. And then it becomes part of the graven word. Ultimately, this kind of stuff even gets into biographies. It gets official. And it all comes from the world of Blabber. There will be more on this next week.
You've been listening to Gene Shepard, humorist, author, and recipient of the Mark Twain Award for 1976.